Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us today at the Forbes India Insights, Transforming Healthcare with Technology, powered by Epillo. To our audience who've joined us today, extend warm greetings amidst these turbulent times. And we hope you and your family are staying indoors and safe. Please do remember to wear your mask at all times. We're joined today by a rather distinguished panel who are undoubtedly pioneers in the field of healthcare to speak about the need of technology in transforming the sector. We have Ms. Meena Ganesh, the CEO and MD of Portea Medical, one of India's fastest growing providers of in-home medical care. Dr. Arvind Lal, the CMD at Dr. Lal PathLabs. Mr. Vijender Singh, the CEO of Metropolis Healthcare Limited. Both Dr. Lal PathLabs and Metropolis Healthcare have been at the forefront of the COVID fight, and they are two of India's best-known diagnostic companies. Mr. Mukesh Rathi, the CIO of Dr. Reddys Laboratories, who will be bringing the Sputnik V vaccine to India. Dr. Bhupinder Singh, Chairman of Board Epillo Health Systems, a leading digital healthcare company based out of Europe. And Mr. Aasif Shah, the CEO of Epillo Health Systems. Thank you, Meena and gentlemen, for joining us today. We're in the midst of a really grim situation. As we speak, much of our existing healthcare system has been stretched, and in some cases even brought to its knees by the enormous second wave of COVID-19. Hospitals are out of bed, people are gasping for breath, and even crematoriums are burning non-stop. There are projections that the worst is yet to come, and the peak is only expected in May, and we hope that doesn't happen. But the current crisis, which has affected most of us personally, unlike the earlier wave, is also an eye-opener of sorts. Clearly, we've come to understand that our existing health infrastructure is inadequate, and for a country with a population of this scale, much more needs to be done. Technology could be that lever, as in when we emerge out of the crisis to rebuild a sustainable future and make healthcare accessible and affordable for millions. Technologies like blockchain, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data will have significant roles to play and can be leveraged and integrated to create new business models. That means the future of healthcare will undoubtedly witness a definite shift from a curative to a more preventive and tech-enabled approach. Think of the emergence of blockchain technology and how health information exchanges can now become more efficient, disintermediated, and secure. Or for that matter, how telemedicine has helped us during these turbulent times, and even the government's own ambitious National Digital Health Mission. On that note, let me begin today's discussion with views from all of our panelists on how you're handling the current situation, and if the past year did prepare you for the eventuality that we are seeing today. Let me start by going across to Meena, and then we'll have the other panelists join us.
Hello, Manu. Good to be here on the show. Even though it is really one of the most trying times in my life, I've never experienced something like this, as I'm sure is true for most of you. To answer your question, what we are doing right now, one of the key objectives that we are working towards is to try and see how we can keep more and more patients away from the hospital, stabilize them at home, give them comfort, give them the medication, give them the medical support that they need, so that hospitals which are super overloaded can focus on those patients who really need the hospital help. Towards this end, we do remote monitoring of home isolated patients. We provide support at home in case the patients need that help, with the help of nurses, with the help of nursing attendants, provide them with oxygen therapy. And recently, we've started to work with some hotels who wish to create isolation facilities so that patients can be stabilized there instead of trying to move them to a facility. To answer your second part of your question as to how have we prepared ourselves, I think over the last 7 years, we've been spending all our time in building capability to support patients outside of a hospital. That has been our stated objectives, and that's what we built ourselves on. And having a comprehensive set of offerings which help towards this, including a very robust technology platform which helps us monitor patients remotely, has helped us to do our own small bit towards this whole big crisis. In the wave one, we worked with a number of state governments to help manage home isolated patients of COVID through a remote monitoring. using technology and using healthcare workers. This time round, state governments are way beyond that. It is not possible to monitor home isolated patients. We just have to some degree, let them be on their own, and they are only able to manage the ones which are truly, truly critical. So, from our end, we've been supporting a lot of these patients. We are currently working on procuring a large number of oxygen concentrators directly, as well as we've got a number of donors who are supporting us, because the problem is that while those that can afford will pay to rent out an oxygen concentrator, and many of them are even buying, there are a lot of poor people who just cannot afford it and are gasping for breath in their homes. So we have created a program by which we provide these oxygen concentrators free of cost to a number of people who are in the economically backward section, with the help of donor money, which is coming towards this effort. So it's very challenging. A lot of lessons to learn, and I'm sure Manu, during the course of this conversation, we'll talk more about that.
Absolutely. Let me bring in Dr. Lal and Mr. Vijender Singh here. Testing is absolutely critical in these times. So take us through, what you think, if the past year could have prepared us better, and, how the situation is right now. Dr. Lal?
So, Manu, please allow me to give you an overview, and which I feel must be shared. So, India, as you all know, has been reporting over 300,000 cases since the last 10 days or so, and 1 lakh cases in the last 25 days. So, since the start of this pandemic this year, India has been dealing with four major variants of this virus. That's what I want to talk about. The first strain originally originated in Wuhan, China, which was brought to India, as you know, by medical students. The second one was the B1117, first identified in the UK and carried to India from those traveling from the UK. And these two strains proved to be less virulent than the next two strains now which have been identified. And the first one is B1617, the most common strain in India for the last 2 months. It's also known as a double mutant. And the current one, which is B1618, is highly prevalent in Maharashtra, West Bengal, and Chhattisgarh, also being called a triple mutant. And this is a dangerous one. And as you can see, that most of the people who never thought, people are meeting me and telling me that we don't even know how we got infected. We never met anybody. So there are lots of theories. That one is that it makes into the droplets here are giving way to aerosol, which are much lesser, in size, and they hover around in a room like a cloud. And the people in that room, they leave, and the cloud remains there, the aerosol, and other people come in and they get infected. So I would like to add that evidence is also now emerged that this probably the 5 to 10 micrometer aerosol, less than 5 micrometer, they are the ones which are probably responsible. And you may have heard that now people are, Dr. V.K. Paul has said that you should wear 2 masks and N95, or 1 surgical mask and 1 cloth mask, and even at home you should be wearing masks. So this is the reason which I want to clarify it for everybody. So I would also like to say here that India has failed to anticipate and prepare for the second wave, which we can see we were just discussing, in the form of hospitals declaring shortage of beds, oxygen, drugs, etc., ventilators, an increasing rate in number of deaths in the country, which is not a pretty sight. And not only in hospitals, our crematoriums are running full of capacity. So I would like to say here at the end that saving lives should now be the government's only priority. We need to execute lockdowns as well as calibrated financial packages for those who cannot earn a living during a lockdown. And I would like to just emphasize here that there's been a lot of a discussion that no, we should not lift the lockdown, and should lockdown is now gone, and but I say that when there is no life, what are you going to be doing with the livelihood? In Hindi they say jaan hai jahan hai. So I think that lockdown has its own very special place. It should not be used indiscriminately. and now in these micro, hotspots, etc., which have now come about. So I think that is where you have to concentrate on, and I think we can win over this if we do the things right now. So I would like to stop here for the time being.
Right. Let me just bring in Mr. Vijender Singh here. Mr. Lal spoke about 4 different types of the virus. How prepared were you? Did you get time to prepare for what is really going on, and take us through that? Hey, did we lose Mr. Singh?
Yeah, so if you go back a year back, I think there were two important things. First is that nobody knew that what's going to happen to COVID. And I think number two, there were only two important things which were critical that point of time was to do more and more testing. And second was to take all safety measures. There were no vaccines, there were no kind of medications available. But if you look at now, so there are vaccines now available. So somewhere I think the challenge probably is to maximize our vaccination inoculation in the country, and today we have 125 crore population. So if we little bit hasten this whole vaccination program, I think to some extent that this situation can be contained. Now if you look at second thing, somewhere what COVID has brought is the behavioral change in the consumer's mind. The consumers are now more aware about safety, quality, and hygiene matters. And important was to also provide convenience, because if people step down from their houses, there were chances that people may catch infection. So hence at Metropolis, what we did that we created a lot of platforms, and these platforms were not just for patients but also for our customers also. We in fact heavily invested onto various platforms where we created these platforms where we can engage with patients, because at that point of time it was important to actually connect with the patients and your customers, because that was the time when these customers and patients were looking at you, that diagnostic companies are going to be there with them when they need it. So these platforms actually really helped us in terms of engaging with patients and providing convenience, and also provide various safety factors also. So I think vaccination is something which probably in coming months the government and the private institute should quickly get into, and probably should work on that polio campaign, which in last couple of years we have seen a lot of campaigns has really helped us in eradicating polio from the country. So I think those kind of campaigns needs to be immediately actioned into plan, and probably there might be less of cases of COVID. And that's what from my side.
Right. Before I move to bring in Bhupinder and Aasif, I have one question to Mukesh. Mukesh, Vijender spoke about the need to ramp up vaccinations. You are going to be in the picture very soon with this particular vaccine. So how are you sort of readying up for that enormous challenge that we are facing right now, and how are you looking to sort of do that? And what are the platforms you're banking on for that?
Sure. So I think, first of all, in terms of priorities for Dr. Reddys, I think our first priority is, of course, safety of our people, and everything possible we are doing to make sure that people feel safe when they come to work, because we are part of essential services, and we have to continue to produce medicines which are needed, not just for prevention, which is vaccination, but also for management of the condition. Remdesivir is a classic example which went under very high shortage in the last few weeks. So I think that is number one, because unless we run our plants, unless we bring our people safely to the workplace and they contribute in manufacturing these medicines. The second part of the story is the logistics, ensuring that actually logistics and information. Number one, ensuring that everybody is aware in terms of availability of these medicines. Many a times the problem becomes manifold because of lack of information and awareness. And hence, initiatives like we put together a website where anybody can go and check availability of remdesivir in their, which is Reddy, in their specific area, what we could do to help, etc. Also linked to that, when we talk about Sputnik, I think it's vaccine which has to be maintained at relatively much lower temperature, and hence ability to manage the overall cold chain from a logistics perspective. A lot of technology components involved there as well in terms of data loggers, ensuring the temperature is intact in the whole value chain from the point whether it is imported or even when we are start manufacturing it in India as well. So I think a combination of all of this is what we are putting in place to make sure that both we bring them vaccines very quickly to population in India, as well as make the medicines available to manage the condition for people who are suffering from it. Just a couple of comments on the second part of the question which you asked before. I think we as a company invested heavily around technology in the last few years. And when the first wave of lockdown hit us in March, I think we were sort of very fortunate that we are fairly well placed to make sure that we could continue services and actually move a lot of people who don't need to touch the product or touch the equipment could work remotely. And hence work could continue, manufacturing it could continue, and we were able to continue to supply medicines to patients. I think in this, we sort of made significant progress from there till now, and we were surely much better prepared. But I wish the industry in general was better prepared in terms of inventory, and I think which is where all the struggle happened around some of these essential medicines. I think all the effort is now on to ramp up production and make sure the stocks are available for better management of the condition as we go from here.
Right, interesting. Also, now let me bring in Bhupinder and Aasif also here. Early days, we saw Arogya Setu, then COVID. I mean, that's essentially the platform now for vaccination. Even from the government's point of view, there's been a lot of stress on, on sort of embracing technology. When you look at our Indian healthcare companies, have they really unlocked the potential of, digital transformation in healthcare right now? Bhupinder, maybe you can give your thoughts and then I'll move to Aasif.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everyone. Being amazing in this testing time, I want to say that we all are together and will be supported in the best possible way and causes us to start with. We, with the government and we as a company also, we have a mission to help people lead the healthier, safer and a lifestyle, a safer lifestyle every day through the products and services that connects, automate, disrupt, and bring innovation to the digital health landscape. Actually, as a healthcare, I see it's not just about medication and a treatment nowadays. It's also about a lifestyle management, and we are working towards that. We help people to achieve a balance between treatment and its management through the healthy lifestyle change. And just to simplify, what I'm trying to explain is a lot of times certain drugs don't go with another drugs, and the layman is not aware of that. Similarly, certain foods can increase or decrease the effect of certain drug or a medicine you are taking in, and a common person is not aware of this fact. And we as a company at Epillo, we work with the digital therapeutics and with the help of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and all new blockchain technology in the healthcare, and it helps to understand patient's profile, and it suggests them to a drug and a drug food interactions, which can not only help them in getting their treatment right, but also to improve the efficacy of their treatment plans and help them to recover faster. In the countries like USA, and you can say, and Europe, there are close to 50% of their population is on the medication, a daily medication and the treatment plans. And we as can say that our technology will be very useful for their healthy management, and to work on the complements. The healthcare industry mission is to enable more care into the ecosystem and bring innovation healthcare solutions to everyone's lifestyle. And we are bringing we provide the solution to their mobile devices, and they can operate from their home, and we help them manage their medication, align their meals and plans. Right food diet is equally important along with the medication, so we bring all that together, and we do the patient's profiling with the help of the better lifestyle choices. and that way the digital healthcare is really important, and I think it will it will serve the very pivotal role in the near future. And because of this COVID situations also, it will help people to monitor their daily uh, daily diet. They will help to monitor their oxygen levels, their all lot of profiling which is required to keep yourself healthy. And we just jump in right there, and we are working really hard every day to make this possible. Yeah.
Understood. Asif, I put the same question to you as well. Are healthcare companies, across, pharmaceutical companies and otherwise, have they really unlocked the potential of digital transformation in the sector, or are we still in the sort of nascent stages even now?
Hi, Manu. Good afternoon, everyone. Healthcare sector has been at the center of the COVID-19 crisis. On one hand, it had the responsibility of treating COVID-19 patients, vaccinating the patients now, and testing the patients. It has also faced several other challenges, much like other sectors. In the midst of it all, the sector has had to continuously innovate and come up with new ways of taking care of patients. With industry players like Dr. Lal PathLabs, Metropolis Healthcare, Portea working towards at-home diagnostics, at-home healthcare, and on-the-point healthcare, and Dr. Reddy's lab, rolling out the vaccines. Digital systems, along with the other healthcare infrastructure, are changing all spheres of our life, and certainly also healthcare. As the digital revolution converges with healthcare into this new exciting field of health, which we call digital health, we are easily able to track, manage, and improve both our health and the health of ones we love. We have seen the biggest example of digital health in the times of COVID crisis, right from the oximeters to Arogya Setu app to digital infrastructures to register patients to roll out patients to take appointments or to do anything. If technology wasn't there to manage such billions of population in this times of pandemic, would have been difficult. Digital health is also helping to reduce inefficiencies in the delivery of care, while at the time it is streamlining access and improving quality of medicines, and personalizing and precising medicines more. Sometimes people need help and medications aren't enough. So we at our organization, Epillo Health, are actively working on and testing a new subcategory called digital therapeutic technology, which is also called DTX, which is a crucial aid in treating illnesses and elevating diseases and just amplifying the therapy benefits of what patients are already going through. Like our technology is particularly focused on treating drug and drug food interactions, for increasing and amplifying the benefits of medicines and prescription plans that people are already on. During the times of COVID, we have seen significant changes in consumer preferences and behavior, and their behavior towards this healthcare sector. In terms of hospital visits, a response reflected that more than 90% of the respondents expressed their fear of visiting hospitals, during and after COVID. The safety and precautionary expectations of the patients have increased. They expect the hospitals to be more cleaner, the staff to follow more protocols, the technology to bring in more value in their life. The affluence of healthcare delivery at home has increased. So the companies and organizations that are coping up and that can cope up with this technological advancements will survive in the COVID era, and that will lead to the overall benefit of the population. That's what I feel about the role of the technology in healthcare sector today.
Understood. Let me bring in Meena here. Meena, in the early days, so much of talk about telemedicine and sort of the advent of technology, how we'll be adapting to that. But as things started sort of stabilizing or going down in India, we saw people. I don't know if this is true, but a lot of people probably would have chosen not to do those as well. So, is there a problem in sort of adoption of those technologies within from the consumer's end, and what can be sort of be done about that as well?
So, Manu, I think after the first wave, there has been a huge increase in teleconsultations for all digital health players, as well as other solutions have emerged. For instance, like I was talking about home isolation management of COVID positive patients. They are kept at home and somebody is monitoring them regularly, and teleconsultations are done at the right time. Also, I've seen that teleconsultation for other conditions not related to COVID, more teleconsultations for a second opinion, elderly who are not going out, wanting to only do teleconsultation. This has indeed gone up. There has been a massive increase in the adoption of this. Of course, this is driven by the situation and by the circumstances, and post things coming back to normal, I presume that there would be some drop. That said, I think this COVID has probably served as a huge change in has led to some significant change in behavior, where you see even elderly people who are not very comfortable with technology are finding it more valuable to do the teleconsultations and to do video consultations. So in my view, actually there is a big change that this has brought about. The second thing, just speaking of digital health, it's not just teleconsultation but also capturing point of care or at patient end vitals, and there are a number of players and number of devices that have come in. And they were there earlier also. Last 7 years, I would have seen hundreds of devices and hundreds of such manufacturers. But the use case was just not coming through. But now, as a part of the COVID monitoring, suddenly devices have become valuable because having somebody monitor them continuously is becoming challenging. So connected devices which are able to capture the data at the patient end and push it up into a control center, that's starting to make sense as well. Apart from that, of course, I do believe that other capabilities such as AI, machine learning, etc., using those in a better diagnosis and more appropriate treatment is also happening. I'm sure the current crisis will push that also.
Let me bring in Vijender here before I move to Dr. Arvind Lal, and I want to pose the same question to both of them. The ecosystem around healthcare, what are really the opportunities? I mean, we speak so much about digital. What are really the opportunities available with digital technologies that are available to us? I mean, for the layman, what exactly is there?
Yeah. So first of all, I think there are so many startups who have been really innovating a lot of healthcare related stuff. In the past, actually, healthcare was more of a touch, which was traditionally we have been like believing on the touch from the doctor, and those golden words when the doctor tells the patient that don't worry, theek ho jaoge. That itself was really a point of confidence and trust on the doctors. Now I think more about if you talk about digital, I think it's more to do with electronic medical record management. If somewhere if any patient comes and all the records are managed on this particular platform, I think it's going to be a first sort of step towards the whole ecosystem on digital diagnostics or digital healthcare systems. So it will not only improve the efficacy of the treatment, but also will be more efficient. And number three, I think important would be that with these things, probably the cost of healthcare services would also reduce to some extent. So from my point of view, I think first of all, what needs to be attacked is EHR or EMR, platforms which really can help the patient. Now, second question comes on the security and safety. For there, something has to be worked upon the safety and security of the patient's data through password protected files. USBs, creating some USBs which the patient can actually use these, data. They can sort of tie around their wrist, so that the data is constantly available to the treating patient. So I think first is this from my point of view, and when you talk about digitization of healthcare system is concerned.
Absolutely. Dr. Lal, would you like to sort of comment on that bit, about what really can be transformed with digital, in India's case?
Allow me, I'll come to digital in a minute, but I think the burning question is that has there been a failure to increase testing, tracing, and vaccinating? So, if I may be allowed to answer this basic question, so as we all know that the the testing has really, increased in India. And of course, I think one day we went up to a full level of 15 lakhs per day. But the states with high burden are still not testing enough. So that is the point I want to make. And WHO guidelines suggest positivity rate of 5% and below. Whereas our current positivity rate is around 20%, and this is way too high. In our many days in our labs here, we are reporting even 30-35%. So I would like to add that Delhi has reported a decline in daily testing this month, with the positivity rate shooting up to about 40%. And RT-PCR testing in particular, which has got more than 70-75% accuracy, has now gone down to almost 30%, by about 30%, not to 30%. And this is undermining all the other efforts we are putting to save lives. So personally speaking, in our Dr. Lal PathLabs, the workload has gone up at least 5 times, and we are testing about 10,000 samples of COVID RT-PCR in Delhi alone, and another 10,000 in our labs all over India. So the demand for the other tests, which are post-COVID infection tests, like CRP, D-dimer, IL-6, has also risen sharply. I would say about, again, 3 to 5 times. However, we are facing shortages on the supply side of most of these kits because practically nothing in our line is manufactured in India. And since the current dominant strain, which I had just talked about, is found to be more infective than the strains we are dealing with last year, it is, I think, very important to not lose sight of the basic, which is test, track, isolate, and then vaccinate. So as soon as possible. And then I would like to, add quickly about the vaccines. So now we are all hearing that tomorrow onwards, that is 1st of May, under 18 will also start getting vaccination. And the point is that we have vaccinated less than 40% of our current eligible or of our current goal, which is 45 years plus. So with huge variations across Tamil Nadu, and which has covered 18% of eligible population, Chhattisgarh says it has covered 69%. So let's look into the maths or mathematics of the universal vaccination in India, how much you want to vaccinate. So from my figures are that it is, if you take both these vaccines to be about 80%, efficacy, which are currently, and I'm not talking about Dr. Reddys, vaccine, which should be better. And you need about 70% of the population to be included in vaccination to have a herd immunity. So this tantamounts to 87.5% of the Indian population. And if we take Indian population to be at a, say, rounded number of 130 crores, you have to vaccinate, Manu, 114 crore individuals. 114 crore. Now, if you start vaccinating at 30 lakhs per day, which incidentally we had touched one day, but now we are even less than that, you will take about a year to vaccinate all these 114 crore people. And if you go up to, say, 50 lakhs, you can do it probably in 8 to 9 months. So additional focus should be to prioritize and accelerate vaccination in these 150 districts identified with more than 5% positivity rate, which I just spoken about. And also, what you need is a lot of coordination between the center and the states. As you know that they are not talking to each other sometimes. Delhi government is always blaming the center, and Madras High Court is telling something to the Election Commission and all those things. And these private hospitals, private labs, to ensure equitable distribution of vaccines and avoid acute shortages. The oxygen supply shortage situation should never be repeated. So that's I would like to say here.
Absolutely. Before I bring in Aasif also here, I would request our audience to please send in the questions so we can take these questions at the end of the session. So please do send in the questions through the course of the conversation. Aasif, you mentioned you want to speak about about the integration of EHR with health infrastructure, how that's really going to help. So give us your thoughts on that before I go back to what Mr. Lal had said.
Sure. As we see, India is in the process of vaccinating, and Dr. Lal rightly mentioned that it is of the utmost priority. As I already spoke, that we are struggling with 3 things and many things at a time, like vaccination, testing the patients and treating the patients who are already infected. So when a COVID-infected patient is admitted, in a healthcare facility, so COVID basically decreases your immunity, and there are a lot of underlying, health problems that a patient is already facing. And in the times of panic, where we are not able to, fulfill the resources, the use of e-health tools, specifically EHR systems, which contains the history of the patient. When a patient is sitting in front of the, doctor, he needs to know, apart from COVID, what other underlying health problems they have. So if we try to integrate public, private players and the technology companies to come together around a common objective of a digital approach, that's how we can realize the digital transformation and bring in long-term value care into the system.
But even then, I'm sure there will be a lot of challenges, right? I mean, in that whole integration. Mukesh, would you want to sort of comment on the health technology ecosystem right now, and what are the challenges that we are facing?
Sure. So maybe just to sort of take a step back and also add on top of what Meena began with. I think if we look at the overall patient journey, I think we could broadly look at it into three sort of broad buckets. One is, in general, better self-care. Right? You don't want to fall sick, right? And there is a lot happening in that space with the combination of apps, wearables. I think Meena spoke about capturing vitals all the time, etc., such that you overall increasing your awareness of health and not going towards falling sick. Yeah, I think that is sort of one zone. The second zone is maybe access and consultation, advice, diagnostics, the whole chain, right? Now, this is where the biggest challenge in India today is, right? When we think about number one, access, I mean, we all know the ratio of number of doctors to the population, all of that. Also, the challenges I think Dr. Lal spoke about in the situation like this, however, a diagnostic ecosystem, starts falling short, how it increases such a high pressure onto our ecosystem, etc. And of course, then the medication, availability of medicine, the whole e-commerce, etc. Now, this second zone is my sense where maximum innovation, maximum effort is right now. And probably also because this is where most of the money in the value chain today is, and hence everybody is focusing there, right? And then the third part of the equation is condition management, right? So you've been diagnosed with something, you've given advice, you've got the medicine, but it's a relatively longer condition, and then you need to manage that condition. I think there was a mention of digital therapeutics, which is one specific sort of intervention helping you, but there's a lot more which is happening outside India and should come here as well, around community development, coaching, etc., etc. Now, when you think about these three buckets, I think if there is enough investment on the first one, which is better self-care, I think it will help us to drastically reduce the load on the second one. Okay, but for whatever reason, I think it has not been evolved at the speed as we would all like to. Right? So that is one aspect. The second aspect is what maybe Vijender briefly spoke about it around PHI. But I would sort of even take a little bit broader thing to it around overall standardization and interoperability, right? The healthcare system is missing the USP of the high-tech world. I think the high-tech world is somewhere where we should learn from how on an ongoing basis they continue to evolve standards, and then the whole ecosystem work around those standards. And that is what brings the power of the ecosystem, to sort of solve the problem. In some form, I continue to tend to feel that various parts of the ecosystem are almost holding the elephant from different sides. But is it all coming together? Is it all coming in a shape and form such that it resonates and works well for the patient today? It is something missing. And that is where there's a need for an intervention. I don't know whether it's maybe equivalent of TRI or something like that, which creates and manages these standards around which the whole ecosystem could operate. Right? So that is the second comment. And the third one is also when we look at this whole space, in simple words, we have to put there is hardware and software. Hardware is about devices, wearables, lot of stuff which we end up using for diagnostics, collection of vitals, etc. I think if we apply the India lens, we've sort of been lagging onto this, and most of this we buy or import. While we are doing well on the software side, and I think we should continue to do well because of the large population, there is this whole ability to collect data, and once you collect data, ability to apply AI, ML, and do a lot more on top of that. My sense is there should be enough focus on the hardware side as well, and probably India needs to do a lot more in that space as well. So those were sort of few broad challenges I would want to put forward. And I think some of these are relatively bigger problems to solve in general for the industry, and maybe with some help from government.
Bhupinder, interesting points there made by Mukesh. Standardization and interoperability. How we're missing the sort of high tech here, and we really need some intervention here. What are your thoughts, on the challenges surrounding, this enormous opportunity that is available to us?
Yeah, I would like to add here with the future of Indian healthcare and the problems and the some emerging technologies we should add, like a blockchain. See, the Indian healthcare ecosystem consists of many key stakeholders, like there are patients, providers, payers, pharma, medical, technology vendors, suppliers, and the government and the healthcare regulators. So these stakeholders interact with each other through a complex network of interdependent and data intensive workflows to generate a meaningful health information. And the technology has helped the healthcare ecosystem to optimize this complex workflow by connecting the various stakeholders and providing a real-time information to deliver enhanced patient care. But we are lacking at a lot of places. It is lacking to where data security comes in, where the connectivity between all the medical stakeholders comes in the picture, whether they are the hospitals, the government. There is a segregated data. There is no one information where you can go there and have that information, like the you call about in a UK or a European, the national health system. There's nothing which is called one in India, which connects everything at one place. So there are two perspectives of a remaining health information exchange in India. One calls for a secure enabling technology, while the other calls for the standardization through regulations. And for the former, India need to look on the global trends, and evaluate emerging technologies such as blockchain, because we are working very hard on that. So that's the most secure and most immutable thing which cannot be break. So we are working hard on a blockchain on the healthcare, and in the later case, enabling a standardized and secure health information exchange between healthcare providers and adjacent industries such as the healthcare in itself, the insurance, the pharma is an important task for the regulators, which our government and other agencies are lacking actually. With the Indian government having the frame policies and the standard on the EHRs, and the first steps in the direction have been taken, but it's not enough actually. And I can say seamless sharing of information between the providers will ensure a fast and more accurate diagnosis, more effective treatments for the patients. It will help to increase our ability of providers to make care delivery cost effective and improve overall patient experience, which is we are very poor in that. I see India healthcare, the patient experience. If you talk about the government hospitals, if we rate from a 1 to 10, they won't rate more than three or four, because there are so many lacks in the system, and that is need to be taken care. And the use of a unique digital signature, which we can use as a Aadhaar to authenticate information, make a blockchain as the secure encoded technology for that. And it could be answer the Indian healthcare industry legacy challenges. And you can say the blockchain can allow the stakeholders in the healthcare ecosystem to share patients, treatment, clinical information without compromising on security, which is very important. And all the agencies are struggling for that, ensuring information origin as well as change tracking, I could say.
Fascinating, interesting points there. But let me just bring in Meena. Meena here. Bhupinder sort of spoke about how this can help with EMR, and treatment and all of that. What I want to also understand from you is, does technology have the potential to reduce medical expense? And if that is the case, Accessibility, when we talk about tier 2, tier 3 towns in the country, would accessibility then become a problem for these people? What are your thoughts?
So let me answer the first question, and with a very specific use case of where cost of treatment and cost of healthcare can actually be reduced by using combination of technology and outside of hospital care. So if you look at infectious diseases, this is a pilot that we have done with a large insurance company, and post-pilot and post-IRD approval, this is now getting rolled out very broadly. So they created what is called as a fever helpline, so that anybody who has a fever, it calls in that helpline. There's a triage carried out. There's a teleconsultation that gets done, and basis the teleconsultation, we decide whether the patient needs to go through further testing, just needs a medication at that stage, testing, or whether they need to be referred to a hospital. In doing so, the data showed that a good 40% of earlier what would have been sent to a hospital and hence experienced hospital costs got replaced by at-home costs. So there was a direct reduction in costs of care for this infectious disease protocol. Likewise, if you look at a different use case of, let's say, carrying out more complex procedures for post-hospitalization, or even for people who are suffering from diseases such as cancer, many of those diseases can be managed with a combination of at-home care and remote monitoring, so that those procedures can be carried out at home at a much lower cost, without a hospitalization, without the potential hospital-borne additional infections that they may come with. So the usage of a combination of digital health plus outside of hospital care can indeed reduce the cost of care very clearly in many use cases. Now, speaking of access in the tier 2, tier 3, how does digital health, does it help or does it hinder? I would say that if you go to even to the tier 3 or even to the rural locations, now the availability of mobile, availability and comfort of people to use mobile based apps to access anything. I mean, people are shopping, people can very well do the doctor consultations also, can significantly help in ensuring that people get care at the right time. What happens is, in most of these cases where people are living in far-flung areas without immediate access to healthcare, they tend to put off the consultations because there is way too much of resistance to go into a facility which may not be close by. And if they have to go to a different city or a different town to get their tests or for secondary consultation, they just put it off till things become very bad. So what this does is that ensure that people are being checked, they're consulted, they are followed up at regular intervals, so that you prevent things from escalating and address the disease or address the situation early on in the whole process. And that obviously can only reduce the cost.
Absolutely. Definitely. I mean, we hope that happens. Dr. Lal, would you want to sort of, I'd asked you earlier also about even in your line of business, in diagnostics and otherwise, the potential that digital transformation has that you see?
Yeah, of course. In our case, the IT department is the biggest department. But I'll start, slightly, from the legacy point of view. When ICT was emerging, the adoption of these technologies in healthcare were very complex and sometimes very expensive, and of course, very limited. So healthcare companies have been able to break this barrier to a large extent by helping existing services providers adopt digital technologies to transform, how, as you have all mentioned, in various ways. So the health tech vertical is also characterized with a large number of innovators and startups. So in our case, I don't want to go into our, kind of a thing, but we started earliest probably in India in 1986. And we had a management, lab information management system at that time. And in 1999, we changed to Triple G Ultra, which was from an Australian-Canadian software company. And today, it's the IT platform is, what we call a Star LIMS. and this has been, has come in 2012 only. And before that, we had an IBM designed and IBM operated data center. So what we would like to really emphasize now is that now we've been able to completely automate our lab processes and use several enablers like the mobile app for customers and phlebotomists, the chat box on the website, the eMRF portal for material requisition, etc., and high-tech equipment like the Philips ultra-fast scanners to digitize our histopathology samples. And the uptake of digital technologies has further accentuated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Health tech companies are completely revolutionizing how we search for medical knowledge, resources, big data, enabling remote consultations, as have just been mentioned, between doctors and patients. In fact, if you ask me, India has no other option but to heavily rely on telemedicine because we don't have enough doctors. And with the advent of internet, well, the more and more patients are going to be taking doctor consultations, by the telemedicine way. So facilitating clinical support, monitoring quality of care, which is very important, monitoring the spread of disease as what we are already doing, and sharing of data between government and providers as well as tracking. So that is what I would say is, the main, way we can use digital technology. And I'm sure we will, go much beyond this. Thank you.
Absolutely. Vijender, would you also agree to this? And after we take Vijender's answer, I think we'll move to the audience questions before we come back to our panelists for closing comments. Vijender, what are your thoughts? On all of these changes that technology can bring, and what are the sort of the challenges that you foresee in adaptation to this? I mean, things like are people ready to embrace those changes?
Yeah, I think Dr. Lal is right, because if you look at the traditional ways of things, that Dr. Lal can explain much better because he's been there for so many years. But I think diagnostics has always been at the forefront in adopting these, state-of-the-art technologies, whether it is RT-PCR or any other, state-of-art. And today we've been able to kind of, expand our RT-PCR technology into almost about 18 to 20 cities, primarily because of this only. Number two, I think, remember that diagnostics or any healthcare system works on SOPs. And SOPs doesn't mean only SOPs, strict SOPs. The better you follow these strict SOPs, the outcome would be good. Now, the challenge is to digitize all these SOPs. Until and unless you digitize some of these, you are not going to achieve full sort of, benefits of the digitization. Right from sample collection till it reaches the lab, and then upload of results, and then after that, once the results are uploaded, once the result reaches the hands of doctor or a patient, your actually work starts from there. And that is what, a lot of digitization in terms of interaction or engaging with customers and doctors would be the need of our. I'm not here talking about the traditional ways of diagnostics technology. I'm here talking about modern technologies where you can engage one of the spokespersons also talked about experience. I think that is one thing which is a big gap in our healthcare systems. So probably we need to really work hard on engaging with customers and patients. Now in our case, in last 1 year or so, we have developed so many platforms. Whether it is direct with consumers, whether it is clinicians, whether it is our B2B customers, corporate customers, we have created customized kind of platforms where it becomes seamless kind of process or the whole journey of sample right from collection till upload of result actually becomes seamless. So these are some of the important aspects when you talk about modern technology.
Absolutely. So we'll start taking some questions from the audience. And the first question has come from Devanand, who asked, what budget should healthcare and pharma companies keep for new technologies? So let me bring in Aasif here, and I'll ask this same question to some of other panelists as well.
Yeah. So as we concluded our talk on technology and the convergence of healthcare, we have seen that every healthcare player has their own story of how technology has transformed them. Be it, Dr. Lal PathLabs, who said that they took in technology at the very beginning of the outburst of technology in India. According to us, digital health report, the potential impact of digital health for pharma represents an eye-opening $100 billion opportunity globally. Now, it is really upon the pharma companies to embrace technologies like digital therapeutics. If you talk about the pharma sector particularly, we at Epillo Health Systems are working towards making technology around the pill, around the management of prescription plans, around enhancing those prescription plans for the patients. So it is, the budgets right now are a little low in countries like India, but the place where we are working from, in US and Europe, pharma companies and healthcare companies are spending a lot of their budgets, on leveraging technology and adopting things like digital therapeutics and digital health solutions. If you talk about IBM Health, particularly, we are working on drug-food interactions, a topic of interest with also for IBM Health. They are spending $1 billion on just researching on minor and crucial topics such as drug-food interactions, which are yet to touch countries like India. That's what I would like to say to the question of budgeting for technologies on pharma and health companies.
Let me bring in Mukesh, because Mukesh is at the center of all of this. Mukesh, what budget should healthcare and pharma companies keep for new technologies?
I think maybe I'll answer the question differently. I think it's about finding right use cases to help patients in their journey. And at least my experience so far in Dr. Reddy's, budget has never been a problem. I think as far as we are doing the right thing, whether it is about making our value chain more efficient so that we are able to live our purpose of making medicines more affordable and more accessible to our patients. And then everything we are doing in the patient journey, which we call as Pill Plus, and ensuring helping them manage condition, all of that. Never in I think I've been in Dr. Reddys for 9 years, never had a challenge in terms of budget or how much money I could spend. Having said that, I mean, broad direction is these budgets are increasing because there are more and more use cases emerging. There are more and more opportunities are emerging, both in terms of making your own value chain better with digital transformation as well as helping the patient journey. I think a good example to see is banking. I've seen that banks probably, if you look at 10 years back, their budgets would have been very similar to companies, anything between 1 to 3% of revenue. I think they are way above 10% of revenue when you think about the way they operate. My sense is eventually all industries will go in that direction sooner or later.
Interesting, massive opportunity there. Second question has come from Navdeep Kaur, and the question is to Mr. Singh. I assume this is a question to Bhupinder. How are you using the potential of blockchain in healthcare, and how critical medical applications need the trust of a system like blockchain? What are your thoughts, Bhupinder?
Yeah, healthcare is one of the oldest and the biggest growing industry, and it faces many challenges, including the medical records, as we spoke earlier, and medical records placement, patient data storage, and handling the safe and secure manner. There is where blockchain can be the best possible solution to this problem handling, since blockchain is being adopted by many other sectors like chain management, finance, and etc., which also requires a data management to at every step. And it's highly recommended to use its potential towards the healthcare management as well. Healthcare industry landscape is rapidly changing and growing with time, and adding new capabilities with the help of AI, artificial intelligence, along with the decentralized ledger technology, will definitely help in the data management and its security. Today, if we talk, the patients and the healthcare organization are facing a serious problem in sharing medical information among different stakeholders without sacrificing the privacy and integrity of information. Um, or majorly, patients have less or no control over their health data storage or their health information and the transmission, does this decentralized and democratizing medical tech through the blockchain will solve the fundamental challenge in healthcare space, that is how to support large, complex, and disparate data while maintaining the security and privacy of that data. I can say that hence it is a time for the healthcare industry embraces which changes the and adopt to the newer, safer, and faster medium of transmission. So that's what I would like to say, and this is the most secure thing to do it. And yeah.
Let me just expand that question and ask Meena this. When we spoke about blockchain, but when we talk about data, artificial intelligence, machine learning, how critical are these? As Mukesh rightly pointed out, compared to what banking was earlier and to where it is right now in terms of opportunity. How critical are these things? As healthcare moves into the next leg, probably after the whole COVID scene.
See, from where I sit, I see this as a very useful support from a diagnosis perspective. What it does is that if you can use parameters to do the diagnosis rather than always only rely on individuals to take a call, the possibility of using a lot more people with lower level of skills with a fantastic tool to support a huge number of population. And just to take an example, I'm sure you heard of the 5C network. I think it's called for radiology support, and using radiologists from across the country, they are doing, and using AI and machine learning, they're able to do a huge amount of diagnosis for even CT scans of COVID positive patients, or CT scans of people to see whether they are COVID positive and so on. Just a lot of technology can help in the diagnosis. So that is one space where removing using fewer people with maybe people with a little bit of lesser skill, but getting to a probably even better outcome is something that I see would be extraordinarily useful in this country, especially where we have such a huge shortage of doctors, huge shortage of skilled manpower. How do we use what is available? To give you an example, in the rural areas, there are a lot of ASHA workers who are very good in terms of going into people's homes, and we can tell them to capture a certain bit of data using a technology, using a point of care device, and they'll do that. Or they can take an app and capture. You can give them an app, you can train them, they can capture the data, but they may not be able to do the diagnosis. Whereas all the data, when it comes in at the back end using appropriate tools, diagnosis can be quickly turned around, and that can decide who needs to be attended to with what kind of emergency or what intervention needs to be done. So I think this can truly change the public health system if we can use a combination of data capture at the right point, supported by good tools at the back end.
I must add here, Kalyan Shivasailam of 5C was on the Forbes India 30 under 30 sometime back. Yes. And phenomenal work that he's doing. And we've got another question from Elisa Haley. Sorry, Mr. Lal, you would like to make a point on rural areas?
The thing is that what has been said so far is absolutely, true, and it is okay for advanced societies where, say, Bhupinder is coming from, and from where other people are, going to be in. But talking about rural India, you would be shocked to hear that there is only 29% connectivity of the internet. That's point number one. Point number two is that this last mile connectivity, and the government will keep on saying about BharatNet, and 250,000 gram panchayats, out of which 150,000 have been connected so far. But on ground, we don't see. Now, there's no point in connecting a gram panchayat and not connecting the health and wellness center, which the government itself has said that, okay, we are going to build 150,000 of them, and they're going to provide free everything, free, the free treatment, free diagnostics, and free something else, control of NCDs, etc. So my simple point only is that in India, we have a long way to go. Last mile connectivity is not there. And this BharatNet, of course, you people would know much better than me. but I would like you to, really examine new technologies here. And I'm going to take a case in point of Elon Musk's new project known as Starlink, in which he has, 12,000 private satellites are going to be launched. And I believe they've already launched 1,000 of them. And this should bring in the last mile connectivity at a phenomenal speed of 300 Mbps. Now, if such things could happen, I believe it's not going to be cheap. But to start with, nothing was ever cheap in this world. So that's the only point I would like to make, that the last mile connectivity is something which is the on ground reality in India. You come with me, we are running, my wife and I, 10 health and wellness centers or primary health centers in the state of Uttarakhand. Please come with us and see what is happening on the ground. Right. So, and the same story will be repeated in UP, Bihar, Rajasthan, etc. So, I think before we jump on to blockchains, etc., they're very good. I mean, I agree with you that on the one hand we are having a shot at Mars, and on the other hand we are still in the Stone Age regarding basic primary health in India. So that's all I would like to suggest now.
Absolutely. We are really running short on time. So we are going to start taking closing comments. We've got one question for Aasif. So I'll ask you to probably merge that with your closing comments as well. So let me, I know Mukesh and Meena also have to leave. So let me go for closing comments from Mukesh. Mukesh, with all of this talk about technology, the way I see it, or the way that we are going to see the role of that is mostly in preventive healthcare, and how that. So take us through, how that can be accelerated with digital technology, and maybe give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I think looking back at the sort of layers I spoke about, I think there is a increasing effort needed on better self-care. I think that will help us drastically reduce the load on the overall healthcare ecosystem. I fully agree with Dr. Lal around improving primary care, and my opinion is even there, a lot more is possible using digital tech to fully transform that space as well. I think the e-consult, remote diagnostic, all of this is coming for age, and it is about ensuring that it goes to the last mile now, and we truly use it, and that would multiply the overall impact of what we could do in primary care. And then third, as I mentioned, the overall condition management. I think there is more impetus needed there. I don't think there is enough focus from various ecosystem players to do this. Last comment, I think the strength lies in all of this coming together, the whole ecosystem coming together. And there we need as I said, the USB of the high-tech world. We need the USB of the high-tech world and health tech industry.
Absolutely. I know Meena has to go. Ma'am, your closing comments, your thoughts on, preventive healthcare and, how that's going to be accelerated by technology.
So my closing comment is really that I sincerely hope that we as a country learn from this really, really horrible crisis in looking at healthcare as a complete system, not looking at silos and bits and pieces. It's not public versus private. It's not one part of the industry versus the other. It is that there has to be a very comprehensive review of how healthcare can be delivered in a large country like this, with very, very diverse population, having huge needs across the country. I don't think we are doing justice to it at all. We have to pull all the pieces together. And now vaccination is going to be another massive drive. I don't think we are ready for that at all. We have to do a lot of soul searching to put together something which will work for us, and we don't face a similar problem in another pandemic.
Absolutely. Thank you, Meena, for those thoughts. Let me bring in Mr. Vijender Singh here. Vijender, your closing comments on where we are right now and what Meena spoke about. We really need a comprehensive review of the healthcare system. So, what can really private sector do on that front, and can technology have a role in that?
I think the challenge in India is mammoth, and as Dr. Lal said, that the population of India is about 125 crore, and masses would need the healthcare in tier 3 and tier 4 towns as well. So I think this collaborative approach with government and even larger players they all collaborate together and jointly, I think, face this whole mammoth challenge. I think that if everybody comes together, I think this war can be won easily.
Dr. Lal, are you there? Sorry,
So
I think, yeah.
Yeah, I would just like to add in the end that, from if you look at the holistic view, and for a moment, you just put digital, which is most important, I think, in transforming health in modern India. Just keep that aside, but just look at the challenge. The challenge is 70% of your population is living in rural areas where, even water and, sanitation is at, it's a premium. So you've got to first reach there, get into the primary health, because if you do not take care of the primary health, you can keep on building hospital after hospital. Secondary, tertiary health, infrastructure is not the ultimate answer. It is important, but primary health in India has been neglected, for which the government itself has to be blamed, because they have promised that they will start spending 2.5% of our GDP, from 2025 onwards, and I don't see anything happening on that account, which means that the government has to spend on an average 1.2 lakh crores extra every year. At this time, they spent only 70,000 crores in the previous budget, in this modern budget. So if the government also has to chip in large amounts of money, and of course, people like us, in the private sector, have to be roped in by some way or the other. And digitization is the backbone on which modern healthcare in India is going to ride on. Thank you.
Absolutely. Aasif, to the earlier question that had come our way also, which is on, how the healthcare sector is innovating and the role that Epillo is playing on that front. If you could just sort of take us through that with your closing comments.
Sure. Manu, the father of modern medicine, Hippocrates, he rightly said that, wherever there is a love for humanity, there is a love for medicine. As Ms. Gandhi, Dr. Lal, Mr. Vijender, and everybody in the panel talked about the role of technology in their organizations. From a Asha worker, helping a rural livelihood person in the times of COVID, to companies like Epillo and IBM and Google Health working on patent pending medical innovations. Everything is healthcare and everything is humanity. The perspective and perception of technology in healthcare is about helping that Asha worker, uplift her work and amplify more care into the lives of those workers. And for us at Epillo Health Systems, technology is about embracing machine learning, artificial intelligence, and blockchain to innovate and help the population globally at large with the innovation scale, such as drug-food interactions and more critical technologies. Thank you.
Right. Let me just take the closing comments from Dr. Bhupinder also. Somewhere we'll need, mixed, right? There's, of course, so much advancement on the technology front, but at the same time, in a country like India, we still need to sort of manage, our basic health infrastructure. So take us through, can technology fix those as well?
Yeah, Manu, that's a very, very important question, actually. As Dr. Lal and Aasif mentioned, that primary health is actually very important, and if we club primary health with the innovative technologies, and as the government of India always nowadays, they all that they were winning election point was one of the digital India, and but still the digital India is all on the mobile phones. It is just lying on the mobile phones and internet and a YouTube left. It is not implemented on a real need of a healthcare, actually. The people who is even a rickshaw puller, he got a mobile phone with the internet, but there is no healthcare benefit to him. There is nothing which can actually improve his health. There is nothing which connects him to the government for the health issues. So that is where the telemedicine was one of the important aspects for the government, but still they are not even touching it on the very primary level or the village level, as Dr. Lal mentioned, very significantly. And that's really true. We as technology, and we should bring some innovations, and the government should adopt the companies like us and Dr. Lal and all other companies to bring the change in the industry, to bring the change in the health of the rural India, actually, which is the 70% of the country. And Dr. Lal mentioned that it is very important, and it's like a luxury for them to have a tap water. It's luxury to have them a bulb, a light. So that's where we are lacking a lot. So yes, digital healthcare and the government support with the primary health, if that clubs, it can change the future of Indian healthcare industry. Thank you.
We've really run out of time, and I mean, that's when Meena had to leave. But thank you, gentlemen, and of course, I mean, Meena, for joining us today. It's been a fabulous discussion, and we really hope this could have continued for longer. But unfortunately, we are short on time. So thank you once again for joining us. We hope you're all staying safe and continue to stay safe. And even to the audience who joined us, please continue to wear your masks, stay at home, and thank you once again for having us. Stay safe.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.